How exactly do you verify that an email from a former colleague is actually from them? We're diving straight into a massive vulnerability today, one that sits right at the intersection of digital forensics, compliance, and corporate governance. The core issue here is devastatingly simple. Your compliance team is probably checking who sent an email, but they rarely check who is actually logged in to send it.
Think about it. When that recognizable name pops up in your inbox, are you genuinely verifying a digital identity, or are you just trusting a convenient label? A name on an email literally just means someone typed that text into a display field once, maybe years ago. And after that, it just sits there, completely unquestioned, quietly doing the job of proving identity. A job, frankly, it was never built to do.
To really grasp the scale of this oversight, let's look at a publicly documented audit from the city of Baltimore back in 2019. What they discovered is staggering. A former employee had remained actively receiving direct deposits in their HR and payroll systems for 13 years after officially leaving. 13 years. Automatic, unquestioned payments just kept arriving, all tied to a name that no longer belonged to a real employee. And crucially, routine compliance checks totally missed this. It only surfaced during a completely unrelated audit. Let's break this down in Section 1, the ghost employee problem. This highlights a massive vulnerability that we see repeating across all sectors, that dangerous gap between an official departure and ongoing digital access. On paper, sure, a resignation is processed, the exit is documented, but the digital infrastructure? That often remains wide open, and the cost of this oversight is absolutely staggering. Take the 2017 business email compromise scam, for example. Two major tech companies lost $121 million simply because a fraudster set up a shell company using a trusted vendor's display name. Both companies paid those invoices because the names matched their expectations. The underlying metadata told the real story the whole time, but no one bothered to check it. It took them almost 2 years to recover those funds. So the crucial takeaway here is understanding this exact discrepancy. The paper trail says one thing, right? But the metadata tells a completely different story about who is actually behind the keyboard. You might get a financial report with a familiar signature block and tone. The paper trail insists this person is still communicating. But if you look at the underlying metadata, it might show that the original user hasn't even touched that account in months. When attackers strike, they are literally counting on you to just check the label and completely ignore the technical facts.
Which leads us to Section 2, labels versus technical facts.
To properly understand this threat, we have to separate a simple claim from an actual fact. A display name is nothing more than an unverified claim of identity. It's essentially a mask, one that can sit unchecked in a system for months or even years. It requires absolutely zero authentication to just remain there. Think about it. Nobody's job is to notice if it's gone stale. When a colleague leaves, nobody renames their account to say they're gone. As long as that name looks right in someone's inbox, the illusion holds. Login metadata, on the other hand, consists of factual records. These are generated automatically by infrastructure that absolutely does not care whose name is on the account. We're talking IP origin, device IDs, session timestamps, and internal routing headers. These are generated every single time an action is taken. And none of this data is built to be convenient for anyone's narrative. It is the raw, unedited truth of how the system is operating. So, when the display name and the metadata contradict each other, you aren't looking at a technical glitch. You're looking at the exact moment a departed identity was repurposed.
Now let's examine Section 3, the evidentiary verification framework.
To bridge this gap between corporate compliance and digital forensics, we rely on a very strict analytical framework to categorize our evidence. We simply cannot afford to guess based on a familiar name. We have to follow the evidence step by step. Tier 1 is your observable artifact. That's the display name. On its own, it proves nothing. Tier 2 brings us down to authenticated technical facts. This is where we find actual login timestamps and device IDs. Now, when Tier 1 and Tier 2 don't align, we have to move to Tier 3, the analytical inference that someone else is currently operating the account. Tier 4 becomes our unresolved hypothesis about who that unknown operator actually is. And finally, Tier 5 is the legal determination, which requires a formal investigation to definitively declare fraud or a policy violation.
Let's transition to Section 4, limits of metadata evidence. Look, to maintain any sort of investigative authority, we have to be absolutely clear about the boundaries of our technical data. Forensics relies on precision, and part of being precise is knowing exactly where our evidence stops. Metadata gives us undeniable, factual evidence of infrastructure and timing. It gives us the where, the when, and the what. But
and this is critical, it cannot automatically establish human intent, personal motivation, or legal guilt without a lot more context. A pattern of logins from an unknown IP address proves an anomaly in the infrastructure, sure, but it does not automatically prove a specific individual's criminal intent. We always have to calibrate our findings and avoid making accusations that the raw data alone simply cannot support.
Moving to our final segment, Section 5, Practical Actions for Compliance.
Let's translate all of this forensic reality into some practical, immediate safeguards. If your access review process ends at just checking if a display name looks recognizable, you are leaving the front door wide open. Here are 3 highly actionable steps you need to take to ensure you're verifying actual digital identities rather than just reading familiar labels. Number 1, deprovision accounts immediately upon departure. An email address that outlives someone's employment isn't a convenience, it's a major vulnerability. Number 2, audit your login metadata routinely. Look at session origins and device fingerprints, not just the content of the messages. And number 3, tie HR terminations directly and automatically to identity management. When an employee officially leaves, all system access should be revoked simultaneously. No manual intervention required. It's time to investigate your own environment. Look past the label and start demanding the technical facts. I'm going to leave you with one final thought to consider regarding your own corporate systems. What's the longest you've seen a ghost account stay active after someone officially left? Semvanski Labs and Research. Forensics over fiction.